What's going on, hockey fans? This is episode 100 of the Clappercast. This is August 16th, 2021, and we are looking to do our Metro Division off-season reviews, I guess. I'm Burke, and as always, joined by Sean. Sean, what's going on, man?
Oh, just celebrating the 100th episode. Big milestone for us over here.
Yeah, it's gone by pretty quick. It's kind of tough or hard to believe that we've already done 100, or I guess we're in the process of doing our 100th episode right now. It's been fun, man.
Oh, I'm loving it. It's fun to actually put the fandom to a test and, put our knowledge out there.
Yeah.
Our excellent hot takes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of it, is just being comfortable being open about our stupid opinions sometimes. So I guess I've been getting better at that. But yeah, it's been fun, man. And thanks for doing the Central last week.
Of course.
Solo episode. I couldn't be there, so appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I guess we got some ground to cover. So let's dive into it. The Metro is, looking like it's going to be another tough division in this upcoming season. And there's a lot of teams that could look dramatically different. So let's dive in here and just going alphabetically. The first team we want to take a look at here is the Carolina Hurricanes. And Sean, why don't you take it off? How do you think that they've done so far this offseason?
Terrible. Honestly, and most of that for me literally just stems from giving Tony DeAngelo yet another chance in the NHL. We can also talk about how they've completely dismantled their goaltending tandem for cheapness, I guess. I mean, they had Alex Nedeljkovic, supposed to be their starter of the future. He's been developing and been a top prospect for a few seasons, finally does well. They won't pay him a little bit more than they wanted to. They have Peter Mrazek, who was better than pretty much anybody had given him credit for. He was putting up some amazing numbers for them. They let him walk too. They bring in Antti Ranta, who's, it's a decent contract for him. $2 million per season for 2 years. That's fair, but he's hurt all the time. They bring in Frederick Anderson, $4.5 million per season for 2 years. Yeah, he's a decent goalie, but he's struggled mightily in Toronto. And I don't know if he's going to be able to turn his game around well enough in Carolina. And he's also been injured on a semi-regular basis in Toronto, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So they're not doing particularly great. I mean, they've completely destroyed kind of the brand reputation, the goodwill they had built up as just kind of the fun team of hockey with their Storm Surge, bunch of jerks and all that, by bringing in Tony DeAngelo. Now they're just rebranding the bunch of jerks thing into actually being jerks. It's just not a good offseason for them, and it's going to be hard. Like you said, it's going to be a tough division again, and it's going to be hard for them to compete when they didn't do enough to improve.
Yeah, and to kind of bounce off that Tony DeAngelo thing, they're rumoredly interested in bringing in Jake Virtanen as well. So,
was that a past rumor, or is that something they're still thinking about?
I mean, I haven't seen any thing develop on it, but that's the rumor that's been going around, is that they're kicking the tires on Jake Virtanen.
I'm just shaking my head about that one.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that they've done a particularly great job this offseason. It looked like they were a team that was close, and losing Dougie Hamilton and
I didn't even mention I didn't even mention that.
Changing their goalie situation, I don't think it's better. Anderson and Ranta are both injury plagued, like you kind of alluded to there. I think their blue line is a lot worse without Dougie. I mean, they've got Jacob Slavin, who's a great shutdown kind of guy. He when Dougie Hamilton was hurt 2 seasons ago, he showed that he had a little bit of offense that he could contribute. They've got Brady Shea, Jake Gardner, Brett Pesce are all coming back. They signed Ian Cole. They got Ethan Bear. They've got Tony DeAngelo, and then they also signed Brendan Smith. And so I don't know. I don't think that that's a particularly great top blue line in the NHL, but they've kind of
The
got
top two, top three, yeah, it's up there between Slave and Shea and Pesci. But after that, it's a significant drop off, and that's such a change from 2-3 seasons ago when they had like the best defense in the league.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think that they're going to be as strong, and I don't have the confidence in Freddie Anderson and Antti Ranta to make up for the weak blue line there. But hey, I mean, it's possible that they can be surprising. They didn't have a massive amount of change on their front end. They still have to sign Svechnikov here.
And the only thing they lost that I'm aware of is Warren Fogle, and he left Carolina in the trade for Ethan Bear.
Yeah, so I mean, they who did they even lose in the expansion draft?
Morgan Geekie.
Right. So yeah, a pretty impactful loss there. I think no shade to him, but they still have a pretty great top six. Yeah. And, they added Derek Stepan here. I mean, we'll see what happens with Svechnikov. I think this is kind of the time where everyone's going to arbitration right now for RFAs. So, if they can't get a deal done, maybe might go to that. He might hold out. Who knows? But, I don't know. I just think that their forwards stayed the same. They got worse on defense. They got worse in goalie, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. So if they have anything going for them, it's that the Hurricanes have been overperforming for years with the team system, with the coaching style that they've had. So they have a decent chance of hopefully being able to adapt and still compete next season, and they probably will. It's just the roster moves aren't doing them any favors.
No, definitely not.
This is supposed to be a time where they're supposed to be getting better and better to take over for Washington and Pittsburgh in this division, and they didn't. They didn't take that step this offseason.
No, I think that, we'll talk about this later, but I think there's a team that's, another team in this division that has been crappy that looks like they're kind of might be bumping Carolina out of that kind of trajectory in the division. So, yeah, I don't think they did particularly well either. I mean, one potential shake-up thing here for them is that they do have Ryan Suzuki in their system. He might be able to come in and, if he's just like his brother in Montreal, he might be able to kind of make an immediate impact, and maybe that, gets things going. I don't know, but we'll see.
On a similar note there with Seth Jarvis, he's been fairly highly touted and working his way up over the last season. So there's a couple of young guys who should be able to come in and help out their offense at least, but. We'll have to see if they can make an immediate impact, if they can break into the lineup in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and if there's a Tony DeAngelo, Ethan Bear defensive pairing, I'm gonna laugh. And I've always had just a dislike of the Carolina Hurricanes, and it's been definitely spurred on by the fact that they beat the Capitals in playoffs, a couple of years ago, and Justin Williams scored the goal, I think, to win the series. And I don't know. I just don't like the franchise. And, to see them make some questionable new moves is just like, I don't know. I think that they had public opinion on their side in the last few years, and it was really frustrating as someone who didn't like them. And now, they got D'Angelo, and people are like, what are you doing? So I think they really lost that goodwill that they had. Anyway, moving on here, not to, this isn't the Carolina Hurricanes talk show, so we'll move on to, another team that may or may not have had some locker room issues, but the Columbus Blue Jackets. So the Columbus Blue Jackets have had an interesting offseason. They really have shaken things up. They're kind of up against it with Seth Jones saying that, he had no real interest in re-signing there, so they were, working on a trade, and I think that they did, some pretty good work with that trade, and they were able to get Adam Boqvist, who's a great young defenseman who's offensively minded. They got a first, second, another conditional first. That's basically lottery protected. I think they did well in that. That they were up against it and they were able to get a really great young player. And at the money that Seth Jones was looking for, they were able to, probably put some of that towards Zach Werenski, who, is the offensive guy, and spread it around. So I think that there's done a few other things, but I kind of like what they're doing, and it's kind of a get rid of Tortorella. Let's change the team up. Let's get some more new guys in here. Let's get some new blood. Let's change the locker room up a bit. We don't have our long-standing captain anymore. We don't have Nick Foligno. So let's shake it up. So I kind of like what they've been doing, and the weirdest thing of it all is that they lost Gavin Bayreuther in the expansion draft, and then he just signs them anyway. So they didn't really lose anything in that. And yeah, I mean, maybe you can just, how do you think that they did, Sean?
I agree. I think this was a very positive offseason for Columbus. This is something I was expecting out of them a couple of years back when they kind of they sold the farm, so to speak, for that playoff run that one year. And an offseason like this was kind of bound to happen, where they're going to have to take a couple steps back and retool the roster a little bit, and that they did. I mean, they lost Nick Foligno at the trade deadline. They got a whole bunch of draft picks back. They lost Seth Jones, but they got in prospects and draft picks. They got in Jake Bean, decent young defender. They brought in Jakub Voracek, or they brought back Jakub Voracek for Cam Atkinson. The nice thing is that they were able to keep Patrik Laine for another season. But the key for them was just getting all those draft picks and getting a whole bunch of decent young players and prospects in. That's going to go so far to helping them kickstart this rebuild, and hopefully not have to do a full rebuild where they're tanking for a couple of seasons just because of the core that they already have set up here. But I think they've done quite well, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing this team, because there's quite a few exciting pieces, and it's going to be such a radical shift from what the Blue Jackets were under Tortorella, where I really noticed a strong focus on the offense this offseason. Bringing in, focusing on getting Werenski back, bringing in Jake Bean and Adam Boqvist, both of whom are more offensive-minded defensemen. Being able to keep Patrik Laine, like stuff like that. It's just kind of resembling a shift from what the team used to be, just in the mentality and how they're going to approach the game.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch them too. I think they've done a really good job. Jarmo Kekalainen I think he's kind of an underrated GM. Like, I mean, we kind of sung his praises for trying to go all in with that team. It didn't work out. I think he's done a good job of like kind of building back the pool of prospects.
I would even argue that it did work out, because they had their most successful season ever. Obviously they didn't go all the way, but only one team can go all the way. Only two teams can make it to the finals. They still had their best season ever.
Yeah,
when
they
went
won.
all in.
They've won a playoff round now. That was something that must have been bugging everybody in that organization.
I think that ultimately was a success that season.
Yeah, and I think that Patrik Laine and Jack Roslovic move, like, Laine's got to be better. He's kind of bet on himself again for the 1-year deal. The Roslovic fit in. Now that there's a coach that won't just bench everyone randomly, maybe they can get a little bit of chemistry going on lines. I'm going to look for a lot of their younger guys to have some good seasons. They've got like Liam Foudy, Alexander Texier, Emil Bemstrom.
Texier's a big one, because he started out great last season, and then he really lost his game month or two in and struggled the rest of the way out. So that'll be someone to watch.
Yeah, and Emil Bemstrom too. He's looking to have a better year, but all those young guys are looking to get a more stable roster spot in the league, and so I think that they're they put themselves in a good position to have some veterans on this team, but also have places for those younger guys, and they brought in a guy like Sean Corrali from Boston, so adding a little bit of kind of like middle six, bottom six guys that can, just eat minutes for the team too. So, yeah, I'm kind of excited to see what happens with this team, because, they lost Seth Jones. He was having an absolutely terrible season last year. But they got some great assets from him, and I think that their blue line looks really good. I mean, they've got a lot of solid defenders, Gavrikov, Mccann, guys like Scott Harrington, like a bottom pairing guy, but they got a lot of guys with some offensive upside. So I'm looking forward to watching them next season, and they've still got that tandem of Merzlikins and Korpisalo, which is solid. So yeah, I think Columbus has done very well to kind of recover from that all in. Oh, everyone wants to leave. Okay, let's kind of build back, and I think not having Tortorella and having Brad Larson next season, I think should be positive for the team and the organization moving forward. So moving on to the destination for Dougie Hamilton here. This is a team that I'm also excited for. We started with a bit of a negative, moved up with Columbus, and now the New Jersey Devils. What is this team going to look like next season? I am excited to see what a healthy New Jersey team can do in the Metro this upcoming season. Hopefully their team captain Nico Hischier doesn't have any sort of weird medical issues this season. I mean, I felt bad for the poor guy last season. He didn't start the season and then came back for a game and got high sticked in the face or something. And
yeah, he broke his leg, missed the first month, came back, played 3-4 games, took a puck to the face and broke his cheekbone or something up there and missed another month or two.
Yeah, and I think his importance to this team cannot be understated. They are so much better with him in the lineup.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on what they've done in the offseason in a second, but Jack Hughes had a really good second season. And you saw flashes of just such a high degree of skill with him. And,
you started to see those types of Patrick Kane comparisons where he's just grabbing the puck and skating around the offensive zone for 25 seconds on his own.
Mm-hmm.
The little things like that that's showing that he's starting to find his game a little bit. He's starting to understand how the NHL play style works, and just that little bit of confidence in his game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they had a bunch of good years from a lot of their forwards. Yegor Sharangovich was a guy that was really great. I think he could play both sides of the ice too, and penalty kills. He's fast. So yeah, they've got Jesper Boqvist and Jesper Bratt, and Miles Wood was having a good year as well.
Pavel Zacha too. A lot of those guys had breakout seasons offensively, I feel, especially near the end, because a lot of them started to make quite a prominent name for themselves, scoring and putting up some big goals.
Yeah, and so they were an exciting team to watch. And then the changes that they've made, starting up with the one we mentioned, Dougie Hamilton signed a big deal to come to New Jersey, and I think that this is kind of one of the huge things that their team needed. Is just a number one D-man, and it just significantly changes their team, in my opinion.
Totally. I feel like this is why they brought in PK Subban when they did, to try and get a number one defender, but Subban did not work out. And, attempt number 2 in a similar style of defender is Dougie Hamilton, to bring him in. Not only is he going to be an absolute beast on that blue line, he's going to be able to take control of it. He's going to give them offense from the defense, something that they just did not have much of at all. But to me, the biggest thing is that this symbolizes that players are starting to think the team's turning the corner, that the players in the league are starting to have some confidence in the organization, that the biggest name free agent of the offseason went to New Jersey. That's showing it's such a vote of confidence from the players that you're able to attract that. And they also were able to get in Thomas Tatar. So they're getting, big name free agents are coming to New Jersey right now, and that's a huge sign of what players are thinking this team's going to do right away.
Yeah, I it's huge for them, and Tatar, kind of fell out of favor in Montreal, but he's still a great scorer. So in his press conference, he said, a lot of players say this, but he's like, I want to play somewhere where I can win, and it didn't feel like he was just saying that to say it. It was like you could see that teams like he thinks that they can win. So, it's a really young forward group, and I think bringing in a guy like Tatar is huge. He's been part of.
Well, here's the thing: Tatar is actually their oldest forward.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's on their cap-friendly depth chart.
So bringing a guy like him who's been around the league, he's been on some winning teams, he's been on teams with great cultures, is massive. I think a huge role model for some of those guys, and on the blue line, the big story was Hamilton, but they also traded for Ryan Graves, so a guy who's in Colorado. He played with Cale Makar, some other great defensemen, but he's a solid defensive player. He led the league in plus minus 2 seasons ago. Yeah, he was playing on Colorado, but and he had a bit of a struggle last season, but definitely a smart move for them. They have got Ty Smith, who was a surprising rookie last season on the blue line and just did really well. They got rid of Will Butcher, who was kind of the odd man out. But they've got Damon Severson coming back, PK Subban, who with Hamilton there will have a reduced role, which I think will be good for him. And then from there, I think they might have a bit of a issue with some reliable depth. They've got Jonas Siegenthaler, who came across from Washington. And then Christian Jaros, they picked him up from the Sharks. And then they've got some solid prospects because they've been, kind of bottom of the league for so long. So they've got guys like Kevin Ball, who can come up, who's an absolutely massive defenseman who played on Team Canada in the juniors. And, I think he might have made his debut last season, but he's a huge defensive defenseman. So he could, come in, play some bottom pairing minutes. So yeah, I think it's just two real changes on the skater side of thing, just dramatically change it. And then in goaltending, they brought in Jonathan Bernier after Carolina didn't sign him after trading out Nedeljkovic to Detroit. And it's interesting because he's making almost twice as much as Mackenzie Blackwood on his new deal. So I'm interested to see if he's going to be what that looks like, because I know you've been a huge Mackenzie Blackwood fan, and I know there were some absolutely ridiculous stats. I'm not sure if they were last season or the season before about just how much better
his rookie year.
Just how much better they are when he's in net.
Yeah. So Mackenzie Blackwood, he's absolutely one of the best young goalies in the league. Like you just mentioned, his rookie season put up amazing numbers. The team was actually competitive when it was Blackwood in net versus anybody else. However, last season, he struggled mightily. And it sounds like it was mostly due to him having a fairly severe case of COVID, that he really couldn't find his game. He didn't start feeling like himself until the very end of the season. And it showed. He was not particularly reliable, and let's be honest, the defense didn't give him any help. He's stuck facing 10 odd man rushes every single game. So of course you're going to give up 4 goals on that. It's you got to get help from the team in front of you. But he struggled, and earlier in the offseason, there were some rumors that started coming out that the team wanted to get a veteran goaltender to play in front of him or play with him. So there we get Jonathan Bernier, who's been solid playing on a terrible Detroit team. He put up respectable numbers in Detroit, with how bad that team has been. And, they bring him into, I don't know what the ultimate goal is. They paid him quite a bit, so I feel like Bernier might even be the 1A going into next season. But you have to imagine it's just there just to give Blackwood some backup, give him a mentor or someone to help kind of, teach him NHL goaltending position, how to handle it, just to help transition him a bit better after that rookie season.
Yeah, they tried to do that by bringing in Corey Crawford last year, and Crawford retired before the season started, so that obviously didn't work out. So yeah, I think it's a smart move. Mackenzie's Blackwood's their guy for the future, but bring in Bernier for now, I think makes sense. And, maybe just get him in, even if it's a 50-50 split or whatever, or Bernier lays the 1A, just don't tire out Blackwood because they play so much better with him in the net. So, yeah, I think, I'm excited about the Devils moving forward. I think, it's been a rough couple of years, but they've always had, good... They've never been, a easy team to beat throughout all of that, so I think that's a huge positive for them, and just bring in, a few key guys, basically Bernier, Hamilton, and Tatar, shakes it up a lot. So I like that they didn't try and do too much. They kind of went after the guys that they wanted, and, I'm excited for this season. I think they could be kind of a dark horse for a playoff spot in this division. Or wild card.
We'll have to see, because there are a couple of teams that are on their way down right away, depending how much, we don't know how much longer they're going to be able to stay competitive. So there's a couple of playoff spots that are going to be up for the taking here, and you've got a couple of teams on the upswing. It's going to have to be... It's going to be a competition to see which teams can make that jump and when.
Yeah. And I guess moving on to New York Islanders, this is going to be a tough one to kind of evaluate because they haven't done anything. They have...
So I found out there's a reason for that, apparently.
Why?
It's this thing that Lou Lamoriello is trying to do where they don't announce anything because they don't want to tip other teams off about what their cap situation is.
Oh.
I don't get it, because there's so many rumors and stuff floating around that you kind of end up knowing what's happening before the team even announces it. You're not wrong. The team has barely done anything this offseason. In any regard, even re-signing their old players. But apparently they don't want to give up information on their cap situation or something, so they're just kind of keeping everything under wraps.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I sort of understand it. It's trying to not have teams have leverage on you, but at the same time, does it really matter? Every other team is kind of in the same boat right now with the flat cap, and they don't have anything crazy to do. They have to re-sign Anthony Beauvillier. I think they're trying to work to re-sign Casey Cizikas, and then they have to re-sign Ilya Sorokin. So, what? 3 guys. It's okay.
They're not exactly in a cap crunch either. They've got almost $12 million to do that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing was that are they trying to re-sign Palmieri? That's probably the other thing. So it's I guess they've got 4 guys there, but like you said, they've got quite a bit of cap room. So we'll see. There might be a guy that's kind of the odd man out there, probably Cizikas. Which would be a shame because that's kind of their huge line there. But if Cizikas takes a reasonable contract or whatever, and I think that they also had Johnny Boychuk retire, so that looking at cap friendly, they've got a bit more room than it says there. I think. So yeah, we'll see. But this whole mystery, we're not doing anything, is just kind of getting old. Yeah. It's okay, well,
all we really know is. They never even formally announced this one. It just kind of got leaked, but they re-signed Andy Green so that they could meet the exposure requirements of the expansion draft. And then they re-signed Adam Pelech, 8 years, $5.75 million. Fantastic deal for them. That's great for one half of one of those amazing defensive pairings. Yeah. And then they dumped Andrew Ladd and a bunch of draft picks for cap space.
Yeah, and they lost Everly in the expansion draft. So they've got lots of cap space. It's just you got to do it now. But yeah, that Pelech deal is great.
Yeah. So then they're gonna have Pulak to re-sign after the upcoming season. So we'll see where he falls on that. How much of a raise he gets with how well that pairing's been the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and what happened with Nick Leddy? Did he get traded?
Nick Leddy got traded to Detroit for Richard Panik.
Right. Okay. So Panik might be the replacement for Cizikas then. He's kind of a guy that can play up and down the lineup. In Washington, he was playing bottom 6. And
some combo of that or Ross Johnston.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to
and
evaluate.
Then for Eberle, I mean, they already had Oliver Wahlstrom working his way up. He played some time last season, put up some decent numbers, and Kiefer Bellows had a fairly impressive debut with the team. Took him a couple seasons, but he was quite impressive those first few games. He's physically engaged, scored some goals here and there. So,
yeah, and maybe Atu Ratti can crack the lineup. Who knows? So, I don't know. I mean, like, it's a kind of. Did they get better? Did they get worse? I mean, they've lost guys and haven't announced that they re-signed, but I'm just assuming that they have like handshake deals in place right now, and they're just waiting to just like, well, bam, 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 like announce them all at once in just one giant press conference or something, and Lou only has to answer questions once. So, that's what I'm kind of thinking is coming up. But hey, I don't know. So, I mean, they've been in the top of the Eastern Conference or whatever conference finals, so they've been close. Can they sustain it? I think they have to re-sign Palmieri for someone who can actually score, and then re-sign Beauvillier. He had a really good season, so hence Sorokin. So until those things happen, I don't really know. But I don't know. I guess we'll move on to the second half of New York here, and move on to the New York Rangers. And Lord only knows what the fuck the Rangers are going to look like next year, because they looked like they were real good, and now it looks like a very different team, and not in a good way.
They've got some holes. They've done... Like, I mean, the team itself, they're probably going to be able to, replace what they've lost. Because, I mean, they didn't dump that much. It's mostly just finding a way to replace the production of Pavel Buchnevich, because they didn't really bring in anyone to score. They're going to be looking for guys like Kravtsov and Kakko and Lafreniere to jump in and be more offensive than they have been, or, get an actual opportunity to do that. But the thing, like you mentioned, it's like, what are they going to look like? Because now you've got their dumbass owner meddling with the team because he apparently just woke up from the 1980s and needs to make the team be all full of grindy enforcers. So they bring in Barclay Goodrow on a 6-year contract, trade for Ryan Reeves, trade Buchnevich for Sammy Blais. It's just a lot of that type of mentality, and it's just like, what's this gonna do to the rebuild? Because they were looking like a very strong, offensive, dominant team. And you kind of look at their forward depth chart now, and it's like it's a bit hit and miss depending on where those prospects fall offensively.
I think Tom Wilson broke this franchise because they brought in all these big guys, or scrappy guys like Goodrow, Sammy Blais, Ryan Reeves. I don't know, man. Like, the Caps and Rangers games are going to be interesting now with Ryan Reeves and Wilson. I mean, like, the criticism of them when that happened was like, oh, they don't have anybody who can answer the bell, and it's like, oh, let's get like 4 guys who can do that.
You see it, like, I don't even. There wasn't even the criticism of that in that regard. It was literally just stemming down from ownership.
No, I just mean from like
right?
fans. It was like, oh, we're a soft team, whatever, and then ownership was like, yeah, you're right, we are, but. I don't know. I was excited for the Rangers last season, and it's completely gone away for me. The moves that they're making are just, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's that move in the league to get like bigger defensemen and grindier. I don't know. It's like, I think the success of this team really hinges upon the season of Adam Fox. If he can repeat or even get close to what he did last season, they're looking okay. If he regresses or doesn't get to that in any way, their blue line looks a little weak. And they've got Jacob Trouba, who they brought in on a huge deal, and he's been okay, but he hasn't been.
He's not a number one.
Yeah, and then from there, they've got like Ryan Lindgren, who's really shaping into a great really
identity player.
Yeah, just a great battler, hard worker.
He made a name for himself this past season. I started to notice him, mid-season. There's this joke running around that it's like it's not a hockey game unless Ryan Lindgren's bleeding for some reason.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that's always involved. He was already there, and he's a scrappy guy. I don't know if he's much of a fighter per se, but he's always physically engaged in whatever he can find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they've got Adam Fox, who's a great defenseman, but we're gonna see if he can keep that up. And then Keandre Miller, they brought in Patrick Nemeth, and they've got kind of these yeoman guys like Jared Tenorti, Anthony Botetto, and then Libor Hayek, who's a good guy, but they have to sign him. So I don't know. It just seems like it could be a bit weak there. And then their offense, I don't know if they're going to be able to run and gun quite as much. I mean, they've still got a lot of firepower up front, but the loss of Buchnevich, I think, is going to be visible.
Especially in the locker room things. It sounds like some of the other players were pretty choked that he got traded.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it'll open up a spot for Capo Caco or Alexei Lafreniere a bit more permanently in the top six, or Kravtsov, whoever, if they spell his jersey right when he plays. Did you ever see that where they just had a huge typo on his name?
Not on his, no.
Yeah, okay. I was like, wow, great franchise. But yeah, and then they also lost Colin Blackwell, who's another battler guy, which I think his effort, his compete level will be. I mean, Ryan Reeves, is he gonna be able to replace that? No. So yeah, I don't think that they got better. I think that they're just kind of at an interesting crossroads of like a change in philosophy of how to play hockey, and I think that they're going to suffer because of that. And it sucks. It sucks for fans.
It's not an easy transition to make mid rebuild when you've got one philosophy who's guiding, this offensive based rebuild, and right in the middle, right as things start to change, you bring in like a completely different one. And it's one thing to bring in a guy like Barclay Goodrow this offseason to fill a roster hole like Tampa did when they brought in a couple of those guys at once when their team was already set up. But where New York is right now, it's like they're just starting to turn the corner. They're just starting to build a team, and then they completely shift and start shuffling everything around. It's hard to know how it's hard to think that's not going to set that back a couple of years.
And, one thing we haven't even talked about yet is that they fired David Quinn and brought in Gerard Gallant. So they could be very different next season.
Yeah. And that's something that they have in their favor to being making a huge step forward this season, because Gallant's been one of the best coaches around the league over the last handful of years. He's sort of had success wherever he went, and he ends up getting fired under mysterious circumstances at weird times. But he's always done well with the teams that he's been given. So you could look for them to maybe still take a bit of a step forward, but it's hard to see what that roster is going to do.
Yeah, maybe the Reeves thing was him saying to Chris Drury, "Hey, bring me my guy. I want him back. I can work with him. Whatever. I don't know." But it just seems weird. But if there's a coach in the league who can work with this weird group of guys, it's Gallant. So. And the last thing we hadn't really mentioned is down in net. So they've signed Shesterkin for 4 years, 5.6 per season, but Alexander Georgiev reportedly asked for a trade. It's been disputed by his agent, by his party, but apparently Georgiev wants to get traded. He wants more of a bigger role because the Rangers clearly view Shesterkin as their goalie, and Georgiev's going to be looked at as the 1B at best, maybe a backup, depending on how much Shesterkin plays. So they could still be looking a little bit different there as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll move on here to the Pennsylvania teams. And first up, we've got the Philadelphia Flyers. And they've been really active. They've kind of quieted down a bit, but they dramatically overhauled their blue line. And I think it's a good move. I think something had to give there a little bit. And they brought in Rasmus Ristolainen, Ryan Ellis, Keith Yandel, and then they've got pending RFA here Travis Sanheim. So if they re-sign Sanheim, they've got Provorov, Ellis, Ristolainen, Justin Braun, Keith Yandel, Sam Morin, and Travis Sanheim, which is pretty damn good. I think that a lot of those guys, or I guess two of those guys in particular, Ristolainen and Yandel, I think will do better in perhaps a bit of a smaller role on a team, and can perhaps provide a bit better version of themselves in that lower role. They don't have to be like the offensive guy. I wonder if Philly's going to use Risto in front of the net like Buffalo did on their power play. But I think that their blue line is going to be, it should be a lot better just on, the name value there alone. But aside from that, they kind of lost, I can't even remember his name.
Robert Hagg.
Sarowski or something like that in the expansion draft. And then, Robert Hagg. But their forward group looks pretty much the same with the exemption of they traded out Voracek and brought in Cam Atkinson, which I think is a great move for them. It kind of changes it up. Atkinson can score. He can get set up by like Claude Giroux or somebody like that.
And he's a bit cheaper than Voracek,
mm-hmm.
and Voracek had struggled a little bit. He wasn't quite living up to the contract, and the hope is Atkinson can come in and be a little bit more of a Philly type scoring forward.
Yeah.
Than Voracek could.
Yeah, and then the I guess the crux of this team, as it always is in Philadelphia, the absolute linchpin is in net. So they re-signed Carter Hart. They probably got a bit of a discount on him because he struggles so much. So they signed him for 3 more seasons. And then they brought in Martin Jones to back him up.
I have to make the same comment that I made last season when San Jose brought in Devin Dubnyk to back up Martin Jones, I think it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's like I don't understand how this is supposed to help. Because Martin Jones is statistically one of the worst goalies in the league.
Yeah, so, and then, Brian Elliott had his moments, but he wasn't the worst. But I think there was a lot of other goalies available that they maybe could have got. But
for $2 million, I mean, they could have had Antti Raanta. At least he's a better goalie when he's playing.
Yeah. But that blue line is significantly better than it was last year. So, I watched a lot of Philadelphia games last season because I had a lot of guys on different fantasy teams of mine. I had like Claude Giroux and Konechny, and at times I had Goss to spare. So, I was watching a lot of their games, and their defense sucked. Like, they just gave up a lot of scoring chances, and so, they've really invested in it this season. Hopefully, they'll be able to prevent a bit more scoring opportunities against Carter Hart, and to be able to, keep the scoring against them lower. And I think if they can do that, they've got a significant chance of making playoffs. And, as we all know, Philly's bad one year, then good the next, so they're due to be good this season. So I think that, I picked them to be the Cup winner last season because they looked so great the season before. And it didn't work out, didn't even make playoffs. But I think that they're still going to be in the running for a playoff spot. I like the blue line, and I like the addition of Cam Atkinson. It's just, is the goalie situation going to work? I don't know. Anyway, I think that they did get better.
I don't like the trades, all the trades that they made. I think they gave up a lot to get guys like Ristolainen. I think they gave up so much to get rid of Gostisbehere, and I think they gave up a lot. I do agree that I think they probably improved the defense. I'm interested specifically, like you mentioned, to see what Rasmus Ristolainen can do in a reduced role. He's someone who played 22 to 24 minutes a night over each of the last few seasons. He's definitely not playing that much when he's got Provorov and Ryan Ellis above him. But he's also someone who is like I mean, analytically speaking, just terrible. And he's been on the trade block in Buffalo for how many seasons, and it's just he's such a contrast between, like, is he actually that bad, or is it just some sort of weird flaw in the system that's, Rasmus Ristolainen has an exact play style that's exasperating it. So seeing what he can do in a new team, finally getting out of Buffalo, finally getting a little bit of a reduced spot. Yeah, let's see what he does. I really think that, like, I agree with you. I think that this team is too good to be as bad as they were last season. Like, they've got an absolute star-studded roster, and if Carter Hart can bounce back, I mean, maybe he's just had a sophomore slump type thing. But it's, like you said, it's down to the goalies. And this has been a critique of Martin Jones for seasons, that he's been kind of the thing holding back the San Jose Sharks. And they finally moved on from him, but now Philly goes and grabs him. I don't know if he's really the answer to their backup goaltending, and if Carter Hart struggles, to their starting goaltending spot.
Yeah, I mean, they were league worst in goals against, so, they got to be better than that. So, if they could even be middle of the league, I think they could be significantly better. So,
because that basically means you're going to end up giving up half a goal to a goal less per game than you were before, and that's significant when you're playing such a close game where one goal can completely change the outcome. If you give up a bad goal early on, it's a completely different game.
Yeah.
Or all those games where Philly just choked away a lead in the last 10 minutes of the game, because that definitely happened quite a bit near the end of the season.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Okay, well, we'll move on to Pittsburgh Penguins. And this is a team that hasn't done too much either. They've made they made one trade where they basically dumped Jared McCann to the Leafs and got a guy that they used to have, right? Philip Hollander, and a seventh. And then they lost. Who'd they lose? Frick.
Brandon Tanev.
Right. So that's Brandon Tanev, who is, an absolute battler, bottom six guy, penalty killer, energy guy, which hurts. So they basically lost two guys in the expansion draft. A top six forward and a bottom six forward.
And I mean, Jared McCann, in the time that he played last season, was one of the statistical best forwards in the league, in terms of how much he was scoring in his offensive production, which was, he was right up there with elite level scoring. And then to lose Brandon Tanev as well, like you said, he's such a energy locker room guy. And you throw him
that's tough
out there on the ice, and he just kind of gives the opposition that stare.
Yes. Yeah, and then otherwise, they let Cody Ceci go.
What a loss.
Yeah, much to your chagrin, I think.
As I'm wearing an Oilers jersey at the moment.
Yes. And they didn't really make too many other changes. And
they basically just replaced what they lost. They got Danton Heinen and Brock McGinn in free agency, both of whom are more, looking to find that Pittsburgh type forward, that random third liner that just produces at an unreal rate when they're on specifically this one team.
Yes. Yeah. And then they're probably going to look to have Pierre-Olivier Joseph have a full-time spot this season, which is exciting. He looked good for them last season. And then kind of much like Philly, I think the real question for Pittsburgh is in net. Tristan Jarry had a rough playoffs, had a rough season. It was kind of all around the place. And then they've got Casey
Smith looked better than Jarry for significant portions of that. Yeah,
so I don't know. I'm kind of biased, but I don't know. It's hard to rule out, as we always say, a team with Crosby and Malkin if they can both stay healthy. They'd probably be pretty good. They were really good for how hurt they were last season.
That's the thing with Pittsburgh. They're always dealing with massive injury issues, but they're always competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This could be, Malkin's last year on the Penguins. This is his last year on his deal. He's UFA. He's 35. Does he stay here after this or not? He's kind of voiced some opinions throughout the last few seasons of just how unhappy he's been, and the teams try to do things to make him happy and stay, but we'll see. I don't know. It's tough to see like them getting better or getting worse. It's just like they're kind of the same for me right now.
Yeah, it's a very lateral thing. I do think the intangibles lost from Brandon Tanev are going to be hard to replace. But this is also a team that we've talked about just how strong of a system they have, that they can just bring in drop guys into kind of random spots and line up and they produce. Ultimately, the core of the roster is all the same. And I think that's probably a good sign moving forward, because they like you said, they did very well last season, and it's got to be a decent sign moving forward that they'll still be good. And moving beyond earlier than this past offseason, some of the moves that they've made, getting Jason Zucker and Jeff Carter in, they've been working out really well. So the roster's looking pretty strong right now compared to where it had been even in their cup years.
Yeah, that's true. You always kind of got to remember how tapped out they were for that first win in 2017. Their blue line was just devastated. So, I don't know. I think they'll be in contention. It's Pittsburgh. You always kind of got to rule them in. But, I don't know. I guess we'll move on. The last team, last but not least, the Washington Capitals. They haven't done too many moves, but the moves that they've done have been, I think, the right moves, in my opinion. They swapped out Brendan Dillon, who probably should have been picked in the expansion draft from Seattle, but I mean, hindsight 2020. I guess first of all, they lost Vitek Vanacek in the expansion draft. They traded out Brendan Dillon to the Jets, so the Jets got a D-man, which is huge for them. They got a couple second-round picks, and then when Seattle signed Grubauer, they're like, oh, I guess we don't need another NHL quality level goalie. And so the Capitals got Vitek Vanacek back for one of those seconds they got from Winnipeg. So
what did they even lose in the expansion draft? Like, did they lose a second-round pick, or did they gain a second-round pick because they traded Brendan Dillon?
They broke even. So, I mean, it's not quite as funny as the Gavin Bayreuther situation, but I think it's pretty close. And I like Vitek Vanacek, and I like having him back on the team, and it was a cause for concern to not have him. So, Seattle Kraken legend Vitek Vanacek comes back, and it's nice.
Not
to
as
see.
Legendary as Tyler Pitlick.
I don't know. It's just like, I follow a lot of the Capitals players on Instagram, and when the team announced, like, oh, we're bringing back Vitek Vanacek, I could see, like, Tom Wilson liked it and stuff, and it's like, they all like him, so it's nice to have him come back, and, it was a nice, week or whatever he spent on the Kraken roster, but, they kind of broke even on that, and they were able to get rid of some cap space so that they could re-sign Ovechkin. So that's, was a must-do thing. Signed him for $9.5 until the end of 2026. So, they didn't do a lot.
Legit, they didn't bring... Who'd they bring in? Matt Irwin?
Matt Irwin.
That looks like the only move I can see that they made, because everyone else was re-signings.
Yeah, and even, trading out Brendan Dillon is not too bad, because they had a surplus of defensemen with Michael Kempny coming back for next season, and so I thought if Vitek Vanacek wasn't going to get selected in the expansion draft, that they were going to lose one of, Schultz, Jensen, or Brendan Dillon. So, they're kind of in a good place to recover from that loss, and the team looks very, very similar next season. So,
Yeah,
You know?
so it's something that I think Washington's done very well over the last handful of seasons is roster consistency. They're not making radical changes every single year. They're largely being able to run with the same core. I mean, the biggest move they've made recently, I think, was Anthony Mantha,
Mm-hmm.
and it's good for a team to be able to stay together for long periods of time because that's when you're going to build chemistry and that's when you're going to build that locker room together. The issue, I guess, with Washington is they've really struggled in the playoffs the last couple of seasons. Since their cup win, they just have not been able to put it together in the playoffs. They're constantly getting knocked out in the first round. And it's not even like close matchups like you've kind of talked about. They just look completely out of it compared to when they lose against Carolinas, get dominated. They just aren't there. So they still have a cup window. They're still in it. But it's just a matter of can they find that whatever's missing in the locker room to bring everyone together and battle a bit more in the playoffs.
Yeah, they have looked very sad in playoffs. I think part of that from the franchise is there's all these rumors about how they want to move on from Evgeny Kuznetsov, and we're kind of waiting to see if that's going to happen. He's got 4 more years on his deal. What does a return for Kuzi look like?
Yeah, it's hard because there's more going on behind the scenes that we don't know. But if the team's kind of done with a player, that's going to be a negative impact on what you can get in return for him. Especially because I don't think Kuznetsov had a great season last year either.
No, definitely not. And I don't know if they're going to be able to replace him inside of the lineup and stay super competitive with a number 1 center. They've got Kuznetsov and Backstrom who kind of flip-flop, and the only other guy that can really come in right now is Connor McMichael.
I was just going to mention,
I don't know if he's ready to slip into that spot right now.
Yeah, he's not quite up there, so you'd probably be looking at Lars Eller doing a lot of time in the top 6,
which
while
is
McMichael
not good.
Develops,
He's perfect in third. The third center, he is perfect. If he goes up, it's not good.
No.
Because of injury last season, TJ Oshie was playing center a little bit, but we need a center. So, and Kuznetsov has been really bad in his career on face-offs. So, if they could get somebody else in, but it's going to be hard to do a center for a center trade. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with them keeping Kuznetsov. I personally really like him, and I think he can turn it around. And he kind of had a weird season, being on the COVID protocol list a couple times. He's got kids and stuff too. So it's like maybe there's something going on in his family that made it particularly hard to go through the last couple seasons with COVID. So you never know that side of it, but I know he's extremely close with the other Russians on the team, Ovi, Orlov, and Samsonov. So, it would suck if he got traded. I think it would have a really bad negative impact on the other Russians on the team because they're so close. So, I would like to see him stay, but if they do move on, it needs to be the right player coming back. Because like you said, they're still in their window, and that's not going to last forever. So if they're going to be competitive, they got to make sure that they can get someone back who's going to replace what he can do. But kind of like some of the other teams in this division, I think, well, even more so than other teams in this division, the Capitals look like the exact same team going into next season. Like you said, they've only kind of made one change, and that was Matt Irwin, and that's a depth D-man. Who probably will play maybe less than 20 games.
He slots in as the 7th guy, in my opinion, to begin with, so he's only going to really play if someone gets hurt.
Yeah, and I'd rather see, Martin Fairvary or Alexander Alexiev, get some time on the roster and rather than him, rather than a 33-year-old D-man. Although he is from the city that I live in right now. I think that they're still going to be good. It's just when they get to playoffs, can they compete? Where is that compete level? And I think Peter Laviolette's going to be in his 2nd year here as head coach, and he's going to have to turn it around as far as that commitment in playoffs. So So yeah, I think that they've stayed the same. It's hard to say that they got better. Hard to say that they got worse. They did a really good job to get Vitek Vanacek back, though. I really like that move to keep that tandem of Sam.
It saved them a lot of effort trying to find another backup goalie, especially one on the contract with a cap hit of Vanacek right now, because that's huge. With how little cap space they had, and how they needed to re-sign Ovechkin to be able to get your backup, who's shown that he's decent, and they're paying him $716,000.
Yeah, and they were able to sign Sammy for $2 million. So, yeah, I like that tandem a lot of Samsonov and Vanacek. When Samsonov was out last season, Vanacek held the fort down and did admirable job. So, I have confidence in them. Last season, I know I didn't have extreme confidence in that tandem, but they kind of showed to me last season. I was like, yeah, they're okay. I mean, Samsonov had that flub in playoffs where he, was behind the net. Wasn't as bad as Jari, that passed to another guy in overtime. But they're young. They're gonna have moments like that. Yeah, I'm excited for the season for the Capitals moving forward, and I'm really glad that none of my favorite players on the team were lost to expansion, and the fact that TJ Oshie didn't go to Washington or to Seattle makes me really happy, because that was kind of something that everybody in sports media was just like penciling in as like a storyline, like, oh, he's gonna go because Washington was like his second home. He grew up there, blah, blah, blah. And then he was like, no, I don't want to go there. I love playing in the Capitals. So, and he's a huge part of the team.
That wraps things up for this time here on Clappercast. Make sure you rate and review this episode and toss a follow or subscribe our way. For more content, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Clappercast Media or on Twitter at Clappercast. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with more hockey talk.